Okay, so it's not the most popular choice for a project car, but we just bought it for $3 grand. The seller said it had been pampered, so is that why there's a heavy-duty hitch poking out the back? Anyway, we've got sneaky plans for this Ford model that survived an amazing 11 generations. Americans have always gone ape over cool new cars. In 1955, the new Thunderbird began its long history thanks in part to this car. As the story goes, a Ford vice president saw secret photos of Chevy's new 54 Corvette, so the Blue Oval boys quickly produced their own version of a sporty two-seater. Billed as a personal luxury car, it was powered by a 292 cubic inch V8 and powered its way past the Vette in sales. After 3 years, Ford execs thought 2 more seats would bring in more sales, and they did.
This is the first 4-passenger luxury car.
In 1960, a record 92,843 sold.
Every year is witnessed.
For Gen 3, another new look with a new 300-horse 390 FE engine. The 4th generation would be the last for convertibles for a long time, and here's a little T-Bird trivia. 120 special order models came with the fabled 427 cube engine. A big change in '67, moving the car upmarket with luxury and looks more in line with the Lincoln. The next version was the heaviest at 5,000 pounds and the least fuel efficient at about 10 miles a gallon. Gen 7 sat on the Torino's old chassis, lost 900 pounds and a lot of power. Gen 8, another sedan with nice trim. 9 got a more aerodynamic look, but mechanically unchanged. Then came the longest-lasting generation. By the mid-90s, these birds were better handling, more powerful, and featured a low drag coefficient. That's why many were modified for drag racing. Mike Galley got his NHRA license in a Super Comp version at Roy Hill's Racing School, after a dose of Roy's infamous tongue lashing.
Hit it! You're way out of the groove. Why do you not stop the car?
After its hiatus, there was a 3-year comeback that was more of a setback in terms of sales, but it was the finale of a tremendous Thunderbird legacy that flew for a half-century and landed over 4.4 million cars on the road.
Thunderbird, unique in all the world.
Our T-Bird's a 10th generation 97, and you better get a good look at it now, because when we're done with it, it's going to look like this. What? Don't see any changes? Well, good. That's the idea. You see, we're going to have some fun with this deal, turning this mundane plain Jane bird into a sleeper that's a wake-up call to any hot rod street bullies. These cars came out with either a 3.8 V6 or, like ours, a single overhead cam modular 4.6, which we'll no doubt repurpose. That is, after we pull it out.
In its place will be a modern version of the legendary Blue Oval 427. Now it starts with this Ford Racing Boss 351 short block containing a SCAT 4-inch stroke forged crank and connecting rods, plus a set of Molly 4.125-inch bore pistons. Now it's a fat foundation for the serious top end we're going to give it later. Oh, and to top it all off, we even got some retro Cobra valve covers for eye candy.
Getting the old engine parts out of the way starts on top. By the way, the fan's getting a replacement along with the radiator. Now, when you're removing engine parts for a swap, you want to resist the temptation to get in a hurry and rip everything out. Even this factory airbox has a potential eBay customer. Check how this Matco disconnect tool engages the fuel line quick release so the line pulls right off. They're also great for removing AC lines too.
We broke the AC lines loose because we can't use that compressor with the new motor setup anyways. Now, one thing we did do is send the car to the local AC shop before we brought it into the studio so they could evacuate all the refrigerant. It's not something you just want to release into the atmosphere.
Underneath, let's first get the entire exhaust system out of the way. The next thing to go is going to be the factory fuel tank for a couple of good reasons. First of all, we can use the room to run a dual exhaust out back, and we can also use the extra real estate on this Fox chassis to install some beefy subframe connectors. We'll mount a cell in the trunk later on to feed our 427. It's best to do this with a near empty tank. Ours is bone dry, and after disconnecting the lines, it's free to go. Then with the safety strap out of the way, the drive shaft can come out too. Next, we make some room for work up front. Like freeing up the spindles and the shocks. The idea is going to be to remove them, the engine, K-member, tranny, and cross member, all from the bottom.
Come on. Keep coming. Stop. Come back down just a hair. Keep coming. Okay. All the way up.
He's free.
An old tired 4.6.
Yeah.
I'm really impressed at how clean this whole car is. The subframes and everything, there's no rot in it.
Finally, the surgery's complete and the patient's ready for a high-performance transplant. This bird used to fly with the help of a well-worn factory 4.6, but no more. We yanked it and its tired tranny in the name of sleeper surgery. Now the operation moves out back, getting the calipers out of the way, separating the upper control arms from the spindles, and unbolting the sway bar end link, separating the wheel hubs from the axles, then freeing up and removing the spindle assembly. Next, we pried the axles loose from the pumpkin. Independent rear suspension, by the way, was a new factory feature for this generation, improving the ride and handling, but we've even got an upgrade for the twin stock axles. And of course, new springs. Now supporting the rear housing with a strong set of hands, we can unbolt and remove it as well.
This thing came with a 327 ring and pinion gear and a limited slip differential, and we're going to swap it out for this. It's a 28 spline Detroit locker from Eaton. Now it uses a heavy duty case and internals for a superior increase in strength. Now under hard acceleration, it puts power to both axles, and when you let off, it releases so you can make turns easier. Now to transfer the power from the drive shaft to the differential, we're using a set of 410 gears from Yukon, along with one of their install kits to drop everything in. And we got it all from Randy's Ring and Pinion. Breaking the rear cover loose is like cracking a rotten egg. The friction modifier they use in the fluid can get pretty stinky. Now we need to go ahead and remove the rear caps and pry out the old center section. Now this one's been here for almost 140,000 miles, and it's a little tighter than usual. Now we can unbolt and knock the drive shaft flange loose to free up the stock pinion. Before moving on, I'm going to give the housing a much needed scrub in the parts washer.
Well, that's a one-man job, and so is this. While the engine's out of the compartment, I'm going to clean it up in here and lay on a new coat of paint, dark shadow gray. Ought to match. And after emptying a can of cleaner and applying an enormous amount of rubbing, it's finally time to apply some masking tape and at last our Dupli-Color paint. Of course, you got to be careful not to overspray and apply several light coats to prevent it from running.
Back on the pumpkin, I need to remove the stock pinion bearing cups, knocking one out from the front and the second one from the other side. I'm using our hydraulic press to separate the rear pinion bearing from the pinion. Now this shim gets reused on the new pinion, followed by a new rear pinion bearing. Now we can press the new one into place. Now I'm tapping the new pinion bearing cups into the housing in place of the ones I knocked out. Then a new front pinion bearing, some oil, a slinger, and front seal. Now a piece of exhaust pipe helps to tap it in evenly. Check out the visual difference in the new 410 gear compared to the stock 327. Remember, the bigger the ratio difference, the shorter the gear and vice versa. Now the new shorter 410 pinion gear has to turn around 4 times to make the ring gear go around once. It's great for fast, quick launches, but usually not good for cruising because the engine's running at a higher RPM.
Now with the higher gear of the stock 327, the engine's running at a lower RPM, so it's better on gas, but slower off the line. The new pinion gear can now go into the housing, and it gets bolted to the original drive shaft flange. Now we need to check the pinion's preload, which needs to be between 14 and 19 inch-pounds. We've got a satisfactory 18.5. The new ring gear's got 41 teeth compared to the stock gear's 36. Next, back to the press to install new bearings on both ends of the carrier. Then, with bearing cups and shims, we can drop the carrier assembly into the housing. Now, backlash is the amount of free movement the ring gear can make without contacting the pinion gear. Ours is 0.006, which is right in the ballpark. Next, apply some gear compound and turn the pinion to check the tooth contact pattern, which shows our pinion's not too close or too far away.
So we can lay down a bead of Loctite silicone and replace the cover, fresh from the blast cabinet.
Then after bolting it up and taping up the axle holes, I'll apply a little coat of paint.
While Mike's paint job dries, mine's already dry and finished. Maybe not ready for the show car judges, but an improvement if I do say so. Hey, we're back after modifying our Sleeper Bird's rear end. Now it's time to put it back where it belongs. And after bolting it securely in place, we're ready for some more upgrades, including axles. Yeah, and for that, we're stepping up to these 28 spline Stage 2s from the drive shaft shop, and we're gonna need them. They're designed and built to handle up to 600 horsepower. That's thanks to a special hard shell and a chromoly Porsche type ball and cage inner CV. These Eibac sport springs are going to bring the ride height down 1.5 inches, but still give a street quality ride. Next, we can slide the factory spindles over the axles and loosely bolt them to the lower control arm. Then raise the control arm all the way up to bolt the spindle to the upper arm. We're replacing the well-worn stock shocks with a pair of gas-charged KYBs with twin-tube construction.
Brakes are next. First, EBC slotted rotors. Then after reinstalling the caliper bracket, something new for us in the way of brake pads. These Bluestuff NDX pads come with V-grooves to remove gases and debris, and they're made from a fiber race material that's easy on rotors, withstands extreme heat, and has one of the highest friction levels in the industry. The last piece we're actually going to replace on the back of the Bird is the sway bar. Now this is the factory one that came off of it. It's real narrow and not that strong. Now check this out. This is what we're replacing it with. Now this piece came from ADDCO and it's designed to reduce body roll and improve handling. This thing's made from hardened, high carbon steel and comes with urethane bushings and hardware. When you start putting a lot of power to these 8.8 IRSs, this area back here becomes the weak link. That's because they use the back cover to support the whole center section. Now I made this template which represents a 1/4 inch piece of flat steel. Bolts are going to go through the back cover and into the center section. Another flat piece is going to come out and attach to these bolts. That's going to make this whole area a lot stronger.
Now I first transfer the template to the 1/4 inch steel plating, then use our plasma cutter to burn around the lines I drew.
After smoothing the edges, I move over to the drill press to make some holes, with the help of a little WD-40. Then I make a smaller support bracket, along with holes, and after a little fitting, I'll tack the brackets together and finish welding it up on the table.
That's it for the rear end, but we got plenty more to go.
You're watching Horsepower. For a DVD copy of this episode, just go to PowerBlockTV.com and order your copy for just $5.95 plus shipping and handling. Start your own Horsepower collection, delivered right to your door from the Power Block.
Our Horsepower sleeper's finished out back. Now we can focus on subframe connectors to prevent flex. First, we'll tie into the front subframes, then extend back to here where we connect to a crossbar that sits evenly with the bottom of the drive shaft tunnel and welds to the inner structure. Finally, 2 pieces of tubing will go back to the rear subframe.
We got some interior teardown to deal with first. If we don't pull back the carpet, scrape away the sound deadening material, and grind part of the floorboard down to bare metal, our plasma cutter could turn the T-Bird into a Firebird. Now this is all about making room for a pair of round tubes that'll connect the front subframes to the crossbar we'll make later on.
This car's a late model with a straight frame, but here's something you ought to know in case you're working on an old classic unibody. Over time, a car like this can actually sag in the middle. So to straighten and stiffen it up, you need to use jack stands and the engine's weight to first make the car level. Then you can weld up your subframe connectors, which will actually help keep it straight when the car is back on the ground.
Underneath, I need to grind the ends of the subframes flush, so I can box them in with square pieces of steel. Next, I'll weld a 4x4 inch plate onto each side to support the crossmember, which is next. First, cutting it to length, a little test fitting, making sure it's level, then we'll tack it into place before welding it in permanently. I'm notching the tube ends that'll be welded to the crossbar, and I'm chamfering the other ends with the belt sander. This allows you to create a denser weld pool, resulting in a stronger joint. The next steps are to fab up 2 more bars that connect the crossmember to the car's rear subframe. Now this whole process has been a lot more time and labor consuming than a bolt-on kit would have been, but the structural benefits of having all these welded in brace points are well worth it.
Well, now all that's left is covering up the floorboard holes with some tin, and that subframe concoction is complete. Next time we'll move forward and finish up the front shocks and brakes right on the original K-member, of course, after we get rid of that engine and trans. Then comes the fun part. Building a 427 for our T-Bird that's already been blueprinted for a collection of parts that'll help it live up to its name, Deep Sleep. You'll want to stay awake for that, so we'll see you next time.